And then the next issue is, as is happening in South Africa and among the black parts of Los Angeles, you turn it on first and then you charge them to switch it back on. Now that is one side of the argument. The other side of the argument is that water is a human right, and therefore in the rights-based policies, of which we must explain a great deal more, economic, social, cultural rights or whatever. We have civil and political rights, but the world stopped then, but not crossed over to those economic and social rights. The right to development, the right to life itself, the right to water, as in fact a basic aspect of living, of life. And that's a confrontation that is occurring globally. It also arises in relation to education. The OECD said education is the next big thing, announcing that there were investment opportunities in private education in Africa rather than public education. And then you move into all of the other areas, water, education, transport, and so forth. I am not arguing for the exclusion of private investment in any of these areas, but I am saying that the Congress of Trade Unions and all of the unions cannot be silent when there is a deliberate attempt to substitute private for public. If you do that, you are ending the concept of universalism, be it in relation to health and hospitals, be it in relation to water or any of the other issues that I have mentioned. In relation to the most recent events, because I'm running out of time and I don't want to, but of course this was allocated especially for an address for myself, so I suppose I can allow myself. Someone was said earlier, and it went into some practical housekeeping issues, because I am president of the party. I wish all of the members of the parliamentary party had been here, and that they could have heard the discussion and the way that the people are feeling. And I don't feel in the least threatened by it. And I don't feel any problem about people having different views, or of people saying that they're coming from different traditions. And many of our mistakes in tactics and in everything else are coming from the loss of this ability to be in the large groups taking decisions. You can make terribly bad decisions. And there are things, I'm not interested in the business of recrimination, but I do think, let me say clearly, that if you thought it through, offering the people an electorate, offering the people a choice at an election time, is one project. I have contributed years ago a chapter to a book on coalition building in Europe. People have been building coalitions in countries in Europe for decades. It's a different task. You offer the people a choice for election. And it's a separate project forming the government after the people have decided. And these two projects have to be kept separate. That's what it is in a mature democracy. You don't say, and this raises the issue immediately, when you say tactically, you say, I agree with you that you want to get those people you privately hate out. It might be good for both of us. And you say to them, if you want to bring your tribal project to fruition, and you need us, it's going to cost you this, 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 and this. That's tactics, and that is an electoral strategy. And then afterwards, when the people have made their choice and so forth, and you have, as we had, the best set of policies that you could possibly have. And I'll say something else, the people willing to read them. Because our experience here in this constituency was that people had far less interest in flyers than they had in our newsletter, which had 8 pages. And they would frequently say there's reading in that. And we distributed those newsletters 1, 3 or 4 times a year on an issue like public transport and housing or whatever. So it's there for us to win. So it's very, very important for us to realise that as well, to build up our identity. But the last thing that you can do is to appear like that which you are accommodating into power. And then the next part of it is that which is in fact the tribal alternative between those two great monoliths, Finnegod and Finnegate. And you can simply say, well, the ball didn't bounce for you. But it's their ball that didn't bounce, not ours. And our ball... simply saying that maybe, as I said, the international debate will take on themes like, if you like, the public or private provision of water and education and housing and all of these issues. It is important that we take stock of something that is important. I mentioned the technology. I mentioned I'm putting this stage on my website. And I mentioned the way that the control of the media has so singularly shifted. It's important that we build a literacy. The only way of undoing the myth of progress was attacked in its time and disposed of. The modernization model was disposed of. The myth in globalization, for example, you have those who, well-meaning people who say, I'm interested in the ethics of globalization. That is, when it has all happened, we'll stop the blood flowing out from under the dome. The issue is that it involves changes in relationship, changes in power. But to do that, you have to become a better economist than the people writing about economics. You have to be better at the sociology. And I say here the work here in Alan's work, and those works about the corporate takeover of Ireland, and so forth. This is invaluable work. For example, and I say something else that is important about that, is that we need to do that work. Because, like, let's say, where did you see in the paper, let's say, when the central bank, as I said yesterday, were warning that people have to be careful about wage moderation, because if you ask for wages that were beyond 5%, you know, the economy would be disastrous. And you have 30,000 people within 2 years who are not going to be working in the construction industry. Remember the thing that is not said. It doesn't matter a damn what they were building. The fact that they were building speculative housing, rather than something that might have been that more socially valuable, doesn't get asked at all. There are lots of capacity in the building industry, the construction industry, for work that will be a public benefit rather than a speculative benefit. But what you do not see is that the growth rate between 1996 and 2001 is achieved at a practically dismal export performance. The export surplus has disappeared. Between 1995 and 2001, the growth rate was in fact sustained by a cheap export level performance. So how therefore can you have a higher growth rate with the export growth disappeared? Well, what has happened? And if you will just I offer it this time as a hypothesis to take away and ask people, what has happened is that you've had a revaluation of the property base of Ireland with no real productive addition. Property has been revalued, and the ownership of the property has been restructured. So what you're getting, therefore, is a growth rate based on a revaluation. And again, over on the other side, at the European level, you're getting a growth rate that is sustained by acquisitions and mergers rather than by any fundamental real growth in productivity. And all of this, you say, therefore, there's something what Roger Cole is saying in relation to the manner in which the US economy plays better my neighbour with the rest of the world, but it's a fact. But we have to become our own economists, we have to become our own sociologists, and so forth. And I end then by saying this. We must stand for the social economy going into the European elections. We should open up the gap between us and the other parties on that. In the Lisbon agenda it said, competitiveness and cohesiveness. Cohesiveness went down. Little attention paid to it now. All the languages about competitiveness, labour market flexibility and so forth. Go into the European elections, speaking about the social economy, saying we don't want a low-wage slum economy. We want one where we can in fact expand that which will be available on a universal basis across a whole raft of things. Campaign on these things. Campaign against PPPs. Campaign against the privatisation of health. And I think that after that, people gradually will recover from their infections of the Thatcher Reagan period. They will begin to rise out of the illiteracy that came afterwards. And in our language and in our organisation, we will begin then to feel confident, and I believe that it is all there to be won.